As we're continuing our study on the Beatitudes from Matthew chapter 5, we're going to get into that. Just kind of want to give you a little update. A lot of you know I went to Duke this past week, had a little checkup. I go every 3 months or every 6 months, just get a checkup. They didn't really say anything new. My health has not improved. It has not, haven't gotten any worse. Still kind of just the same, and just kind of even keel. The heart transplant list, I'm still on that, but still about the same. Still considered a level 4, and all these 1s and 2s are going to get hearts before I do. So nothing's really changed. I appreciate your prayers. I know God's got it all worked out, so we're just going to keep trusting Him. And when He's ready for things to happen, things will happen. So as we get into our message today, we're going to be talking about trusting God a little bit. And as I start things off, you know, when I was a kid, I didn't read comic books a lot. There were a few superheroes I really liked, and occasionally I'd get some comic books or I'd borrow them from friends. But there were some heroes that I really enjoyed reading about. One was the Incredible Hulk. I just liked him because he was big and strong, and he could just do anything. Mild-mannered Bruce Banner would get himself into a situation. He'd get angry. The Hulk would come out, and the Hulk would fix the situation. So I liked him. I liked Superman. I didn't read a lot of his comics, but I remember Christopher Reeve. When I think of Superman, I think of Christopher Reeve, and going to see his movies and watching him on the big screen. And we like to see characters who display incredible strength, and they use that strength for good. They use it for the benefit of others. And every single one of us has been given strength from God. Not just physical strength, but different kinds of strength. Emotional strength, spiritual strength. God has given you the kind of strength that you need, and He wants you to use it for good. Now, in this series, we're talking about being blessed. And in Matthew chapter 5, Jesus gives 8 statements about what it means to live a blessed life, how to live happy. And we're looking at this, the greatest sermon that has ever been given, beginning in Matthew chapter 5. And Jesus begins the sermon by listing these 8 attributes. This is what it means. This is how to be happy. And I want to remind you of what this word blessed means. Basically, the word blessed means you have a happiness that the world cannot take away. It's not a circumstantial happiness. It is better than that. And today we come to attribute number 3, and we're talking about what it means to be meek. Now, sometimes we misinterpret what Jesus is saying, but in Matthew chapter 5, verse 5, Jesus says, "Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth." Now, how many of you woke up this morning and you said, you know what my life needs more of? Meekness. Anybody? No. We never think about being meek. But what word, when you think of meek, being meek, meekness, what word do you associate with meek? Weak. We usually think of meek as being weak. If someone is meek, we think that they're weak, they're timid, they're afraid, they're shy. And if that's the definition Jesus has in mind, then this is not going to appeal to any of us. But meekness is not weakness. Meek does not equal weak. Instead, meekness is strength under control. It's having strength and exerting that strength, but doing it in a way that benefits others and glorifies God. When you look at the word meek in Scripture, the Greek word is praus, And I was researching this word this week, and I found this. Praus means more than meek. Biblical meekness is not weakness, but rather refers to exercising God's strength under His control. That is, demonstrating power without undue harshness. The English term meek often lacks this blend, that is, of gentleness or reserve and strength. And in Jesus' day, if you wanted a great example of strength under control, the best example was probably a horse. You think about this 1,500-pound animal that is all muscle and power and speed, and it is impressive to behold. But all this muscle and strength is wild, and it's untamed. It's out of control. And so it has to be brought under control so that it can be used effectively, so that it can be used for the master's purpose. Have you ever seen one of these old Western movies where they catch a wild horse and they bring it into the horse pen, and some brave cowboy or some crazy cowboy will get on the horse's back and try to ride it? And the horse will buck and stomp, and it'll go up on its hind legs, and it's trying to get this guy off of its back. And eventually the guy will get thrown into the dirt. And then they'll bring out this master horse trainer. He'll come out and very calmly and peacefully, he'll kind of befriend the horse, and he'll just let it know, hey, I'm not going to harm you. I'm not going to do anything to hurt you. You know, I just want to build some, just get to know you. And so he's very friendly to the horse. And he's trying to build what? Trust. He's trying to build trust with this animal. And once the horse trusts him, then the master trainer can bring all that muscle and speed and power under control. And when all that is brought under control, a horse is invaluable. Now, they used to refer to training a horse as breaking a horse. You've got to break the horse if you want to ride it. And this was an old-timey way of getting control. You know, you get on the horse's back and you hold on while the horse bucks and stomps around, and eventually the horse gets so tired that it can't buck and stomp and rear up anymore, and so you break the horse. But this was an effective way of training the animal, but it relied on dominance rather than mutual trust. And so today, they don't rely too much on breaking a horse. The technique that is used now is called gentling. And it's interesting because in the New Testament, the word praus sometimes gets translated as meek, like in Matthew 5:5, and sometimes praus gets translated as gentle. Like in Matthew chapter 11, Jesus says, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am praus, gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." Now, I don't think anyone would say Jesus is weak. You know, there's no one on earth who has ever had more strength and more power than Jesus. And with a word, he could call down a legion of angels. With one command, he could calm a storm. In 3 years, he has changed the entire world. No one has ever had more power than Jesus, but he was always under control. And when Jesus says, "Take my yoke," he is saying, follow my teaching. Listen to my instruction. Do what I say, because I am gentle. I am praus. I am meek. And if you listen to me, you will find rest for your souls. Now, some of you may feel restless today because there are so many areas in your life that do feel out of control. Maybe you are out of control. But Jesus is calling to you, and he's offering a new way of doing things. And he doesn't want to break you. He wants you to trust him. He wants to come alongside of you and partner with you. He wants to take the strength that he has blessed you with and use it for something good. Use it to make you invaluable to his kingdom. See, Jesus was the perfect example of meekness and gentleness. And we have the 4 Gospels that describe his life. You know, if someone recorded your life, if they followed you around all the time and they watched you spend time with your family and your friends and your coworkers or at school, how would they describe you? Would they describe you as strength under control or strength out of control? Guys, the men in the room, let me ask you, what would your wife say about your control? What would your kids say about your control? How would your coworkers describe you? Would they describe your behavior as strength under control? Are you meek and gentle? Or are you out of control? Guys, when you look at men that you admire, how would you describe them? Now, I would guess that you'd say, well, I admire great men of character. I admire godly men who do what is right even when everyone else is doing what's wrong. I admire men who take care of women and help those who cannot help themselves. I admire men who put others first and are honorable and noble. Now, there was a term that was once used to describe these types of men. It was called gentlemen. Gentlemen. And being a gentleman is not weakness. So maybe we need to bring that term back and actually be the kind of men that God has called us to be. We need to be godly men with great strength that we keep under control. We need to bring back gentlemen. And I know we probably don't think too much about meekness, but now we've been talking about it for a few minutes. How would you say you're doing? On a normal day, maybe you do pretty well. But what about those days that aren't so normal? What about those days when it seems like everything is going wrong? What about those days when your life is in crisis? What about those days when you get terrible news? On those days, it is much harder to keep yourself under control. But those days are not an excuse just to let it all out, just to vent all of your frustration, vent all of your anger, just to get it out. Billy Sunday, this famous preacher back in the early 1900s, and he was preaching a sermon about being meek and gentle and controlling one's anger. And after the message, a woman came to Mr. Sunday and she attempted to rationalize her angry outbursts. She said, "There is nothing wrong with me losing my temper. I just blow up, I get it out, and then it's all over." Mr. Sunday replied, "Just like a shotgun, and look at the damage that leaves behind." Angry outbursts may be effective in the short term. They might cause people to fall in line with what you want at the time, but in the long term, it drives people away. It causes those who love you to walk on eggshells when they're around you, and they don't want to do anything, say anything that might set you off. And eventually, they're just going to try to avoid you. And maybe some of you have been creating this type of environment among those you love most, your family, your close friends. Maybe you grew up in a household where your mom or your dad, or maybe both of them, would just lose control and they would blow up. They'd use their strength and their power to intimidate you, or maybe even abuse you. They used to think their strength and their power was something to hold over you. And maybe you don't like to think about that anymore, but maybe it still affected you in some way. Maybe that has kind of crept into your life, and maybe you're doing some of the same things that your parents did. You're blowing up, you're getting it all out, and leaving behind a bunch of damage. Advice columnist Ann Landers said, "Anger is like acid. It can damage the vessel in which it is stored, as well as destroy the object on which it is poured." And there may be times when you react to difficult situations in the same way that your parents did. And maybe you think it's rational and normal, but other people see it. And to them, it's irrational. It's not normal. So you need to be careful what kind of emotions you are spreading around to others. I heard about a woman that was bitten by a rabid dog, and she went to the doctor to get some help, and the doctor said, I hate to tell you this, but you may have waited too long. There's a possibility you're going to die. And she said, well, if you don't mind, I would like a piece of paper and a pen so I could write something down. And the doctor said, oh, are you going to make out your will? She said, no, I'm going to make a list of all the people I want to bite. Sometimes it's the little things that set us off. Journalist Sidney J. Harris once wrote, "If a small thing has the power to make you angry, does that not indicate something about your size?" But once you take the yoke of Jesus upon you, once you start following his teachings, he changes your heart. He helps you become better. But how does that change come about? There's something required that I think we tend to miss. You go back to the horse illustration again, because a well-trained horse is a great example of strength under control. First, you have this amazing creature. It's strong and it's powerful, but it's untamed. And you introduce this animal to a master trainer, and then you have strength and you have a master, but it still takes more than that. Before the horse is going to relinquish control, before the horse is going to accept a bridle and a saddle, before the horse allows a rider to determine the direction and speed, there has to be something else. There has to be trust. There has to be a mutual trust between the two. And Jesus is our master trainer. And he wants us to trust him. He wants us to know that he is working for our good, and he has nothing but good things planned for us. There's going to be some tough times. There's going to be some hardships, some setbacks, but he's going to be with us through it all. And when Jesus is in control, then you can trust your power because of who is in control. See, the reason some of us are our strength out of control is we don't trust Jesus as much as we should. There's some area of your life where God is not in charge. One person described meekness as being under the reins of the master. And so you take those areas of your life that are out of control, whether it's your marriage or a relationship or with your kids or your career or even someone who intends harm to you. You take all these things and you say, God, this is out of my control. And so I am giving this to you. I am trusting you to be in control of all these areas of my life. See, if you don't surrender these areas of your life to God, at some point, you're going to do something you regret. At some point, you're going to say something or you're going to do something that you cannot take back. At some point, you can safely say, I will lose control in this situation. Ambrose Bierce was a 19th century journalist, and he said, "Speak when you are angry, and you will make the best speech you will ever regret." But when you trust God completely, gentleness comes a lot more easily. See, when you trust God completely, your gentleness will come more easily, because then you can say, I know God's in control. I know he's handling this. And so if he's handling it, I don't need to worry about it. I don't need to get stressed out about it. Psalm 37 goes along with this beatitude that we're studying today. It's kind of a longer passage, so bear with me. But Psalm 37 reads, "Do not fret because of those who are evil, or be envious of those who do wrong. For like the grass, they will soon wither. Like green plants, they will soon die away. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and enjoy safe pasture. Take delight in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in him, and he will do this. He will make your righteous reward shine like the dawn, your vindication like the noonday sun. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. Do not fret when people succeed in their ways, when they carry out their wicked schemes. Refrain from anger and turn from wrath. Do not fret. It leads only to evil. For those who are evil will be destroyed, but those who hope in the Lord will inherit the land. A little while, and the wicked will be no more. Though you look for them, they will not be found. But the meek will inherit the land and enjoy peace and prosperity." You know, this passage drives the point home about trusting God. Don't fret over all this stuff. Don't get upset. Don't stress out. Don't worry about all of this. God is in control. He got it. So you don't have to fret about it. And when you trust God, the reward for meekness is peace and prosperity. Peace is what God offers us. You trust God and you know things are going to work out, and so there's no reason for you to get worked up. You're at peace because you know God is handling it. But a lot of us aren't experiencing that peace because there's an area of our lives where we have not surrendered control. There's an area we have not turned over things to God. You know, sometimes when a person is single and they're trying to find that person they're going to marry, they get a little out of control. You know, they join all the dates, and they walk into a grocery store and they're not looking for groceries. They're on the prowl. They're looking for that person that they're going to marry, and they're thinking, time is running out. I've got to find somebody today. And God is watching this here and there and everywhere, and they're trying to find someone, and he's thinking, I wish you would just let me handle this. Just let me take care of it. See, I don't want you just dating anyone. I don't want you marrying just anyone. I want you to have high standards. Of course, there's nothing wrong with wanting to be in a relationship. There's nothing wrong with wanting to get married. God created that desire in all of us. But be careful about taking a God-given desire and trying to fulfill it in an ungodly way. That is not something God can bless. And so if you're dating, I have two suggestions for you. Number one, keep your standards high. Don't settle for just who is available. You know, I had a Sunday school teacher who would frequently say, don't date someone you would not marry. Don't marry someone who is not a Christian. If you're dating, keep your standards high, because you don't want to spend the rest of your life with someone you had to settle for. Number two, don't focus on pursuing this mysterious person out there somewhere. Instead, focus on pursuing Jesus. One minister said this: pursue Jesus as fast as you can, and then look around and see who is able to keep up. That is a relationship God can bless. And to those of you who are married, don't lose control with your spouse. Maybe this applies to one of you, maybe it applies to both of you. But be careful how you treat your spouse, especially when you're in the middle of an argument. See, a lot of times when you get angry and you raise your voice, your spouse stops hearing what you are saying. As your volume increases, their intake of what you're saying decreases. The louder you get, the less they hear. And you may be making a good point. You may be the one who's right in this argument. You may be the one who is making some very reasonable points, but because you sound so unreasonable, they're not listening to you. You know, a little gentleness in a marriage can go a very long way. So stay calm during an argument, and if things start to get heated, just agree to take a break. Just say, hey, you know what? We're both getting hot. Let's take 30 minutes. Let's go away. We'll come back, and we'll resume the conversation, and we'll both have cooler heads. Proverbs says, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Harsh words are just going to make things worse. But a gentle response, a meek attitude, will bring an amicable resolution. And then to all the parents in the room, be careful how you use your power over your child. You know, there are times when we get really frustrated with our kids, especially if one of those kids is very strong-willed or very independent. And when you get upset with something your child has done or something they've said, it is easy to lose your control. It's easy to raise your voice to them or just to shout them down. But when you do that, one of two things is going to happen. Number one, they will raise their emotions to match your emotions. You get angry, they get angry. You raise your voice, they raise their voice. They will match your anger. They will match your emotions. So be careful. That's one thing that can happen. Number two, they may respond by just shutting down. They'll get quiet and they'll get compliant, and you'll think, well, I've made progress. I made my point. They understand now. And maybe you have won in the short term, but in the long term, there's a good chance you have not won. They may do what you say at the moment, but they're not really going to understand, and they're not really going to listen to you. See, you don't have to raise your voice to get results, especially with your child. And I know that's hard to do, especially when they're driving you crazy, especially when they're making bad decisions. But if you can remain calm and talk to them, everyone is better off. So don't just tell them what to do. Explain to them why this is a bad decision and this is why this is a good decision. Help them to understand. They need to know why some behaviors are harmful and dangerous and why others are just better for them. Psychologist Dr. Laura Markham says, yelling is about releasing anger. It is not an effective way to change behavior. She explains that when you yell at your child, they will immediately feel scared and they will go into fight or flight mode. And when that happens, the learning centers of their brain shut down. They stop hearing what you're saying, and they're now reacting to the situation. And so that means your child is unable to process the lesson that you are trying to teach them because they perceive your yelling as a legitimate threat. They see themselves in a dangerous situation and they are no longer learning. In contrast, Dr. Markham says, peaceful and calm communication helps a child feel safe and makes them more receptive to the lesson you're teaching. So calmly tell your child, this is what is expected. This is why it's expected. This is why it's beneficial. This is why it's good for you and good for everyone around you. And these are the consequences of your disobedience. And so a calm, controlled approach is so much more helpful when you're teaching and you're discussing and even when you are disciplining. One of my favorite coaches, NFL coaches, was Tony Dungy. I always liked him. He coached for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He coached for the Indianapolis Colts, and he won a Super Bowl with the Colts. And I always admired him because, number one, he is a Christian. And he displayed his Christian values on the field and off the field. And I also liked him because he was just a very calm, cool, collected guy. Regardless of what was going on during the game, he just kind of had this even keel attitude. And at the beginning of every football season, he would get all of his players in the locker room, and in this very calm voice, he would say, "Gentlemen, this is the loudest I will ever talk to you all season long. I will not yell at you. I will talk to you and treat you with respect, but I will also hold you accountable." Cam Cameron was another coach in the NFL, and he said this about Tony Dungy. Tony dispelled so many myths about the coaching business, that you had to be a yeller and a screamer to win. Tony showed you can be your own person. Treat people with respect. Be very demanding, but demanding in a way that doesn't trample on people. And you don't have to give up your faith to win in the NFL. Tony Dungy is a great coach, but more importantly, he is a great Christian. And he embodies meekness. He has this tremendous strength and authority. He's in control of all these big, strong football players. But he keeps all of his strength under control. If you want to do great things in your marriage or for your kids or for your coworkers, if you want to do great things in God's kingdom, allow Jesus to use your strength and your power and authority. Let Jesus bring every area of your life under his control. Give him the reins and strive to live a meek life. If you do that, then you will inherit the earth. Would you join me for prayer? Father God, I pray for each person here today. I pray for those who are watching online. And Lord, I know so many of us need to bring our strengths under control in some area of our lives. Help us to surrender our strengths to you. Help us to use those strengths for your glory, for the building of your kingdom. Father, help all of us to be more like your Son, Jesus. And it's in his name we pray. Amen.